So yeah, I'm not sure if I'm really an expert on this topic, but I'll just do my best. I honestly, I didn't even know what a millennial or Gen Z was till they asked me to talk on this topic. And I was a little bummed out that I'm not really young anymore, but I'll try to do my best. And so just to let you know a little bit about myself, let me see here. So my name is John Kevin Lee. I grew up in Chicago and came to Springfield about 13-14 years ago. I serve at the University of Illinois at Springfield. So that's a picture of our campus there. For those who don't know, Springfield is actually the capital of Illinois and hometown of President Abraham Lincoln. But other than that, there's really not much out there, just a lot of cornfields and our school and government buildings. I originally moved down here for work and to do my residency training at the SIU Medical School. My wife, Becky, also came to America just a few years prior from Korea, and she was just learning the language. We had one child at the time. So for the first 3 years, we were just doing house church ministry in our home. So there's some pictures of people we brought to our home each week to do Bible studies and worship service. So after my training was done, though, at the residency program, there was a decision to make whether to go back to Chicago or stay in Springfield. So we prayed about it and we decided to stay and bury our bones in the mission field since we had several students already coming. So later, God opened the door for us to become a club on campus and worship there. So through those means, we were able to meet more students. Just because we got free advertisement through the school, it allowed us to get funding for food and other activities. And of course, it allowed us to have a place to do Bible studies and other events closer to students. So there's a picture of our worship services. It looks like a decent number of people, but actually when we first started, it was just a handful of students. So it took time to build our numbers. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what evangelism of millennials and Gen Zs looks like, especially on the college campus. So one key thing we try to do is outreach early. So usually students are open only for the first few days or weeks of school. So you really have a small window to really reach them. So we try to get a hold of them before any other clubs or organizations reach them. So after the first week of classes, there were just way too many other clubs competing and organizations competing for their attention. So they really don't want to sign up for so many other things once the school year continues to progress. Therefore, that first few days of classes, we just put out tents and just hand out cookies, lemonade, ice pops, just anything and everything to draw their attention, get them to come to us. Last year, we did a photo booth with students holding signs about making it through their first week of classes. I think that was a very popular thing. Millennials and Gen Zs love taking pictures using their smartphones. And so that drew a lot of people. Also, we tend to not tell millennials and Gen Zs that we're a Christian group right off the bat. We may tell them about social events we're doing and when and where. So we won't give out information or handouts with our names or logos in the beginning. By the way, this is nothing new. InterVarsity, Campus Crusade, Navigators, if you look at them, they have nothing Christian about their names. So this is a way to just get more non-Christians to join. Some fellowship things we do throughout the year. Let me see if I can get this slide to move. So some fellowship things we do are we take them to a pumpkin farm. Another event we did was speed friending. You might have heard of speed dating. This is just speed friending, just trying to make friends quickly. Or take them to sightseeing trips. So this is a picture of Starved Rock down here, which was about 2 hours north of where Springfield is. So Springfield is kind of a semi-rural area, so there's not much else to really take them to see. So we'll take them to places like these. So, and again, we try to do this very early on, at least the first week of school, first few weeks of school, because beyond that, cliques have already formed and students have already decided what social circles they will join and who they will make friends with and who they won't. Other forms of evangelism toward Gen Zs and millennials are things like we did a praise night on campus because young people really seem to be into music. We did a free prayer and cupcakes. We also did something called the Alpha series. So I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a free video series. You can find it on YouTube. It's a topical kind of Bible study. So they covered things like, why do you need to read the Bible? What's the importance of going to church? Who is Jesus? Why did he die for us? So you can check it on YouTube later if you have time. It's pretty good. I don't like every video, but you can pick the ones you like. And there's 4 versions. I recommend the youth version. So this is another great way for people who are non-Christians or those who are not quite ready to come to a Bible study or Sunday service to get connected somehow spiritually. It's also a good audio-visual way to get them to pay attention and receive the gospel. Especially many millennials and Gen Zs are very much into screens and watching something more than reading things from a book or talking things out. So this is a good tool. With the pandemic, we've also had to resort to more online evangelism. So let me see if I can get to my slide. So many millennials and Gen Zs are very tech savvy. And so having a good understanding of social media and other online tools is really key to reaching them. Many of them know about us just through checking the school's website on something called UIS Connect. Every school has some kind of platform, and most likely they're using the same platform. And it's how we put our room requests in, re-register as a club every year, and things like that. Also, I make sure to be very familiar with every type of social media account and which group of students use them. For example, Chinese students tend to use WeChat, Koreans use Kakao Talk. Every other international student uses WhatsApp. So I think that's really important because some of these platforms actually the only way students will communicate with me. They won't respond to emails, phone calls, or even text message, but when I Snapchat them, they respond right away. Also, messaging them personally is very important. Group texts or emails don't really mean much to Gen Zs, and I think all of us. We may feel more moved or maybe just more pressure to respond if it's a message sent to us directly. So it may take a little more time and effort, but it will carry more weight. Also, different types of Bible studies we've had throughout the school years were based on affinity groups, such as race, gender, athletics, Greek life. If people have something in common, they'll just gel better together. Also, with less barriers, they can accept Jesus Christ quicker than if they were among people of different languages and life experiences. Not to mention, you can raise up more leaders if you have more groups. Basically, if you have just one Bible study, then you can only raise up maybe 1 or 2 leaders. So this gives more opportunities to serve for young people. Again, we don't refer to these gatherings as Bible studies, so although that's what they really are. That way, if they're not Christian, they're not intimidated to come due to their lack of knowledge of the scriptures. Again, these methods are nothing new. InterVarsity has a Greek branch. By the way, let me just clarify. Somebody asked me a question about this. Greek just means like it's an American term in college to refer to fraternities or sororities, not actual Greek people. There's also a very popular parachurch known as Fellowship of Christian Athletes in the US. And these groups practice the same concept. So it's very effective if you're willing to try it. And if all else fails, free food always helps. So, young millennials and Gen Zs are always hungry. So they're broke college students. So they're always looking for free food. So we always try to have dinner at all our Bible studies in person. Now, someone asked me once whether students felt that they were tricked into joining by calling our events life groups or by the fact that we didn't tell people that we were a Christian group from the very beginning. And just to be honest, yes, there were some people not knowing exactly what they were getting into when they came to Bible study or church. But what was good about this method is that a lot of non-Christians who would have never stepped into a church or were willing to study the Bible finally experienced it at least once. And while some people don't come back, many still do. So people you would never expect coming to a Bible study, such as Hindus, Muslims, and other people who seem the least likely to desire spiritual things, started to do so because their peers did so as well. So, college students have this herd mentality that you can use to evangelize more and more young people. Also, at the end of the day, whether they're millennials or Gen Zs or Ys or whatever, they're looking for a community, especially young people who are away from their families and homes for the very first time. And again, they may not be interested in spiritual things at first, but after being exposed to it, especially with other young people, they begin to do so. Finally, what kind of young people should you focus on? I think that's an important question. Should we try to reach every millennial or Gen Z out there? I don't think so. I try to look for socially and emotionally mature students, those who have people skills and a good network of relationships and friendships. These are generally the students who can be very effective in co-working and doing campus ministry with. Also, looking for influencers versus isolated people is very important, especially if a student only cares about studying and just lives in the library all the time. They may be smart, but if they're socially awkward, immature, and they don't have a heart for others, then that person is probably not going to do much for God's kingdom. In fact, they may drain you and prevent you from helping other students when you're focusing on them instead of influencers who can help you bring others to Christ. But probably the most important thing to look for among Gen Zs or millennials are those who are fat. I don't know if that's a politically correct term, but it's just a mnemonic to describe faithful, available, and teachable students. So if they don't possess those qualities, then they may not be worth investing your time and your energy into. You still can allow anyone and everyone to be in your ministry, but they may not be the main ones you want to focus on, because your goal should really be multiplication, not addition. You want to find young people who are selfless individuals and can teach others also. In other words, you want to raise disciples who can raise up other disciples. So, focusing on those who are leaders, shepherds, and laborers is key. Therefore, you really have to pray diligently to God that he helps you to know who to focus on and be careful in who you choose. So I love this quote from Dr. Bill Bright. He's the founder of Campus Crusade, but he says this: all people are equally important, but not all people are equally strategic. So let me give you two examples of this in my own life. Let me see here, of how I've been able to do that. One of the Gen Zs who came to our church was a student by the name of Vince Walker. So Vince is here. Let me see. He's here in the middle on the left-hand side. And Vince was on the UIS basketball team, and really our first student athlete as well. So I don't know what country you guys are from, but athletes in America tend to be some of the most influential people in our country. So we pay athletes millions of dollars. They're very influential on college campuses. And honestly, I was really intimidated by him. And I thought for sure, someone like this is never going to keep coming. I had no experience trying to do ministry among student athletes. And at that time, we didn't have many white Americans. A lot of the Caucasian students went to other campus ministries, which were run by other white Americans. Anyway, he began to come from time to time, but Vince never accepted my invitation to Bible study. Later, I started to slowly build a relationship with him through inviting him over to our home for dinner, going to his basketball games, and treating his teammates to Buffalo Wild Wings. So that's a sports restaurant here in the US when their season was over. One time they had an away game in West Virginia. So that's many states over from Illinois. It's about 10-hour drive from Springfield. And usually that's when no one, including their families or closest friends, goes to their games. They might have supporters who drive maybe 1 or 2 hours away, but 10 hours is quite a journey and usually requires at least sleeping one night at a hotel. But I drove to their game and I was their only fan. So I don't know if you ever watched an American basketball game at a college, but one side is the home team and the other side is a visitor. So if you're a visiting team, you really feel lonely because that bench is completely empty. And so I was the only fan there cheering for them. And every 10 minutes, the basketball team kept turning around, wondering who's this guy, supporting them, screaming their lungs and driving 10 hours to see their game. But from that day on, they never forgot that I came there to support them. And from that day, I became really close with Vince's dad, who was the head coach of the basketball team. And he allowed me to meet his team and pray for their games beforehand. So I was kind of like their sports chaplain. Also, Vince started to come to Bible study for the first time, and he started to invite his teammates and other athletes from different sports. Started to come as well. So these are a lot of other athletes who play soccer, cross country, golf, and other things like that. So that's one story. Another student by the name of Tarush, so this is him here on the right side in the middle, was one of our first Hindu and international students who came to our ministry. So he came from Mumbai, India, to study computer science at UIS as a grad student. We met him on club day and exchanged information after that, but never thought we would see him again. That week, his apartment burned down from a fire caused by a cigarette his roommate was smoking. Now, Tarush and all his 5 roommates were now homeless and had no place to stay. So the only person he knew who to contact was me. Now, Becky and I didn't know anything about these guys. And, we had little children at home. We weren't exactly sure what to do. So we prayed about it and decided to take all of them into our home that night and let them stay there. They were covered in ashes and reeking with the smell of smoke from the fire. And our hearts were just broken for them as we let them sleep in our home that night. So they were so moved by our generosity that Tarush and all his roommates started to come to church and Bible study every week. And that's when we started getting such a large influx of international millennials and Gen Zs, because word began to spread among them about who we were and how much we loved and cared for them. Now, I know I've been talking a lot about different ways of evangelism, and there can be many methods that work for some people and some that would work horribly for others. I mean, I don't know what your ministries are like. I don't know if you even have student athletes or Indian students or any other group like ours. But at the end of the day, I think Tim Keller said it best when he said the best kind of evangelism is the kind you do. Now, millennials and Gen Zs won't be wowed by your Bible knowledge or how cool your Facebook posts are. They'll care most about how much you love and care about them. Now, someone mentioned to me in the UBF Forum Committee that many of you may be older people and have generational gaps with college students. But I want to tell you that that is really toward your advantage. Millennials and Gen Zs have hundreds, if not thousands of friends, especially if you look at their social media accounts. So they don't need more friends. In fact, many of those friendships are pretty shallow and meaningless. So what they really need is shepherds and mentors, people who have lived before them and can guide them on their journey of life and their walk with God. Now, finally, I just want to end with one passage here in Numbers 13. So some of you guys might be familiar with this story when Moses sent out 12 spies to check out the promised land. But 10 of them came back with a fearful report and melted the hearts of the nation. After describing the giants they encountered, the spies nervously said, "We became like grasshoppers in our own sight." But only Joshua and Caleb came back and declared, "We should by all means go up and take possession of the land, for we will surely overcome it." So unlike the other 10, these two men were up to the task of conquering these giants. But the rest were frozen with fear and low self-talk and not. So for good or for bad, the way each spy viewed himself determined how the giants viewed them as well. So I want to end with this quote from Steve Shadrach. I don't know if you guys know him. He's a well-known campus minister. He wrote this book called Heart of the Campus, which I highly recommend. But it says this: the place to always begin is to go to God and ask him to grant us a strong enough self-esteem and confidence that there wouldn't be a single category of persons whom we aren't willing to approach. Let's take our eyes off of ourselves and our perceived limitations and turn our eyes to Christ and his power made perfect in our weakness. Thank you.